In today's episode, we are getting into all the legal things around stepfamily life with an award-winning family law expert and lawyer for a real housewife. You're going to love it.
I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this.
Welcome. Today's episode is one I've wanted to do for a while. The stepmoms that I work with and the step families often have a lot of questions around, the law and how to protect themselves. And although I was trained as a lawyer, I do not practice. And so I'm really excited for today's guest to talk about some of that stuff. Before we get started, though, I did want to let you know that for the first time in probably about a year and a half, I am going to open up a small group coaching cohort later in the month. It is called the Blended Bliss Mastermind. If that's something that would be interesting to you, I hope you'll grab a spot on the wait list. If you've never done group coaching before, it is magical. You are going to be in a group of less than 10 stepmoms for 8 weeks. We are going to have weekly calls. We're going to have what I call hot seats, which is pretty much where one person talks about what's going on, and then along with the group, I coach them. We will have a chat channel for things that come up between the weeks, and I'm going to also do some teaching. It is an amazing experience, and the stepmoms that have coached with me, it has been hugely beneficial for them. So I hope you'll think about it. In the meantime, let's get to today's guest because I'm very excited about this discussion. Today's guest is a rockstar legal mind in the family law area. Maria Simon is managing partner at the Geller Group and specializes in family law, divorce, custody disputes, collaborative divorce, and litigation. She has represented a number of high-profile clients, including Ashley Darby of the Real Housewives of Potomac. So, of course, I have to ask her about that in the conversation. Maria has been continually recognized as Virginia business's legal elite and has been selected as a Super Lawyers Rising Star for Virginia and the District of Columbia. She's a frequent speaker and a member of the Collaborative Professionals of Northern Virginia, the DC Academy of Collaborative Professionals, and the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. She graduated cum laude from the honors program at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor and cum laude from the American University of Washington College of Law in Washington, D.C. She is active in the DC community, and our paths have crossed, I think, in several organizations. She served 2 years as general counsel for Crispus Attucks Development Corporation, and a couple of the organizations that I crossed paths with her is she was general counsel for the Taste of South charity, which I was involved with for years when I first moved to DC. And she is a member of the Junior League of Washington, where I was president. Along with her zeal for the law, she is an avid runner and yoga practitioner, and she loves cooking and spending time with her husband and 3 sons. And I should add that she brings a step family perspective to her practice because she has been divorced and she has been through all the stuff. So without further ado, let's dive in with Maria. This is a great discussion. I'm so excited for you to learn from her. Maria, welcome. I'm so excited to have you today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so this is a discussion that I have wanted to have for a long time on the podcast because so many of the legal issues come up for stepmoms over and over again. But before we get into the meat of all this, tell us a little bit about Like, why did you get into family law? How did you get here? What's your story?
Yeah, of course. The way I got into family law is quite honestly, I got divorced. So I had been a federal court litigator for a number of years right out of law school. I had a primarily federal court caseload, and I was trying to think of something else to do. I was like, this isn't really me. This isn't where I want to be. I liked my job. I liked who I worked with, but things were not where I had envisioned my life. And so I ended up talking to one of my former law school colleagues, classmates, Rebecca Geller, and she had started this firm and she was doing small business and estate planning. And I was a new mom, and I figured, okay, good, let me do this for a little bit and see where this leads. And we can build a little bit of a firm. And she'd already started it, and I'll figure this out. And it also had coincided with sequestration back in 2013, where the government went into hiring freeze. Feels a little similar to what we've got going on.
Yes,
So,
it
a little bit of an
does.
entrepreneurial. Yeah. Well, and then it just so happened that at this exact moment, basically, I started going through a divorce, and we kept getting questions about, will you do a divorce? Will you do divorces? And at first I was like, no, I don't want to do this. And then as I went through my own and realized the issues that really just impact parents and women specifically, about the need to feel that, I mean, how scary is it that you feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you if you don't have if you're not the primary breadwinner, right? And all of those insecurities that come with it. I thought, I could do this. I know how to litigate. I know how to do discovery. I know how to do a trial. I could switch gears and figure out this area of the law. And I remember just thinking at one point, as we really started down that path and I started taking some clients, I was like, wow, I bet you, and this is like 2014, so it's been over a decade at this point. I was like, I bet you in a year, this is my primary practice area. And it has grown beyond my wildest expectations. I mean, this is 95% of what I do now. And I love it. And I think that it fits well with my personality. There's a bit of empathy. Being a divorced mom, being a co-parenting parent provides a perspective to my clients. My kid now is a teenager. So also having been able to have all of those different life experiences with a divorced parent, like, okay, I get that you're really freaking out with your toddler, but this is not that big of a deal, right? Like in the larger scheme of things, there still does apply bigger kids, bigger issues. So, and just being able to do all of that in the guise of the law has been really compelling. And I feel really fulfilled as a lawyer, which I don't know if a lot of lawyers can actually say that all the time. Also, my clients sometimes are just like fun, and it's like a crazy life experience that you're living through with these people and the stories. And sometimes I'm like, I could not make this up if I tried. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's how I got into
100%.
it.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing being in this field, you really end up living into the counselor part of being a lawyer, right? I mean, obviously, like, lawyer different from, therapist, but I think so much of, especially in the family law space, like, you're dealing with people that are going through like the worst experience of their lives, and being able to turn to somebody like you that understands what they're going through has got to be super helpful.
Well, and I hope so, right? Like I want them to feel like they are in competent, comfortable hands who can guide them. There is a bit of that counselor aspect, but there's times where I'm like, you should talk to a therapist. One, they're cheaper.
Yeah.
Two, they could be through insurance, right? Like, don't use me like your therapist. That's not good. But I think that there is just a lot that I get to delve into in terms of family lives and people and that human dynamic that a lot of lawyers don't necessarily get. And I really appreciate that in this practice. And I've been
That's so
practicing
true.
now, like in total for like almost 20 years. So the fact that I've been able to see from like a corporate angle as well gives me another vantage point of, okay, this is how this would go. There is this very big structure to it, especially in a litigation context, which I think is helpful in
Yeah.
terms of some of the more, complex cases, because not everything is just like, where is Johnny going to sleep, right? Like a lot of times we are dividing businesses and major assets and, investment accounts and how do those get divided and what's equitable there. So I think that it's just much more, you deal with a lot in family law.
Yeah. So that actually is a great tee up for one of the things that I hear a lot from stepmoms, and something that, we've dealt with in our family is how, as, obviously our audience is stepmoms, like how, if someone is coming in and marrying someone with kids, how do they, you're marrying someone who has been through that process, probably with somebody, of dividing all this stuff. Like, how do you as a woman come in like knowing how to protect your assets, knowing how to kind of with an eye to, I mean, obviously, there's a prenup, and I always recommend people do prenups, although we did not. But what, it's a long-winded way of saying, like, what are the best protections that a stepmom can, think about when she's partnering with someone who has kids and has been through all that?
Well, obviously, this is some general advice. This is not legal advice specific to any one person's situation, but just generally. I would say
and thank you for that disclaimer.
Yeah. I think a prenup is always somewhere to start because of the protection of your financial assets. And I do think therapy for the family context, right? And that's outside of the law per se, but to have the expectations with your partner of, this is what your expectations of me are in this relationship. And the bonding with the kids. I'm bonus mom. I'm another adult who loves them, but I'm not there to supplant mom. Right. And I see that a lot in the cases I have and it's unfortunate, where you've got a wonderful step parent, wonderful stepmoms, and maybe mom is feeling, she's insecure about it. And then that actually becomes part of this case where you're trying to make sure that stepmom is minimized to a certain extent, or you're just saying, don't we love the fact that more people love these children and want the best for them and are there cheering them on the sidelines?
Yeah.
And I would think, just as the counselor point of view, is to make sure that your own boundaries are still there in terms of how much you're getting into it or not. Some of the more stressful conversations I've had have been led by the second spouse, like the stepmom, where they're like wanting a certain strategy. And I'm just like, that's not appropriate in this context, or I don't think that's a winning route to go. Right. And that's an interesting position to be in, where you feel like it's being, like, litigation is being pushed by another party who's not a party to the suit. So I would say maybe
that is interesting.
Maybe take your foot off the gas there a little bit and really think about it in terms of the collective whole. But I mean, prenup, basic prenup. That's the best and worst way.
How do you recommend? I mean, there's so many things in a divorce decree, and we discovered this in our experience too. And I'm sure you probably didn't, because you're a divorce lawyer and understand all this stuff. But there's so many things that aren't covered, and I think people are surprised when the kids become teenagers, and it's like, who's going to pay for college? Who's going to buy them a cell phone? Who's going to buy them a car? And a lot of times the step parent gets wrapped up in that, because it's like, well, are they expected to do these things? Are they not expected? Like, what's the best way for people to deal with that? College is a big one.
So I've had that actually articulated in a prenup where we've talked about it. Like,
wow,
where we've done, the stepmom we wrote out what her financial obligations and expectations were. And I think that was a really great way to put those expectations in terms of stepmom and new spouse and his kids in writing. Because there's, depending on where you live, and again, generalized legal advice, like the court stops having jurisdiction over your kid. Maybe it's 18, maybe it's 21. So you don't have to put in things about college. There is a want and a desire, certainly if you are middle class, upper middle class, to include something like, we're going to use we agree we've got 529s. We're going to use those first before there's loans taken out, or we agree we'll split the cost of up to this in-state tuition at the time of matriculation. And then anything over that we'll have to discuss. Right. But there's a certain extent that if you go to court, no, the judge isn't going to rule on college. Right. So
Right.
those are, I think
Assisted
that's one of the
yeah.
big things we see. But then you've got this new family unit and new family dynamic and new family economic structure. Right. And then that's where you see the step parent really coming into play with something like college. Right. Because that's the big expense. So again, having seen that in a prenup, I think is a great way to address it. Like saying, hey, I agree, I will contribute X percentage towards, or we agree that I will not be contributing. My funds will still remain separate, right? Whatever that determination is something that you guys talk about, right? Like the couple needs to have those expectations. I mean, cell phones are, yeah, those kind of things are just not included. I mean, they can be. Like I had one once where she had 3 daughters who were in high school, and she knew the cost of what getting ready for
Oh
a
yeah.
dance was. And I don't think dad knew. And so she put it in there that like, we are going to split the cost of everything from hair to makeup to nails to dress to whatever is for every dance that they go to. And I was like, that is not something as a boy mom I necessarily would have thought of. So I was glad to have it. And some people are like, this is too overbearing. Like, I'm not going to include this. Right. But those are things that are just not included in marital separation or marital settlement
Yeah.
agreement. The two terms are used interchangeably.
And there are
So
things
just,
that people fight over a lot. I mean, the car thing is huge. Like, who's going to pay for the car? Who's going to put them on insurance? Because, and as a boy mom, you know this, like, especially with boys, the insurance is crazy on a teenager, and like that, those are all very real expenses that can add up really quick. And, it's, I think it is rarely addressed and can cause a lot of conflict. And especially when there is a new step parent who's like, well, these aren't my kids. I don't want to contribute. Or maybe they do want to contribute and, they've got a great relationship with the kids and, want to do as much for them as they can. I mean, it's very fuzzy, right?
it is, and it can create a lot of resentment too, is what I've seen from
Yes.
step parents and stepmoms. Like, right? Like I'm contributing, I'm paying for all these things, but the other parent isn't. And this is very frustrating. Like, why is it like, especially if they're a higher income earner, and then there just becomes this expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no good way for us to address it legally, like, right? Like, because when people do get divorced, we are plotting out what the dissolution of the marriage is and basically a skeletal agreement about how they're going to raise these kids, right? And so unless they go continually to like a co-parenting therapist or really and I'm talking about the parents, right? Go in and develop some sort of parenting plan that really addresses some of these nuances at a legal level. I'm not going to be able to do that when I'm just getting their divorce done. And especially depending on when the kids or how old the kids are at the time of the divorce and then when the step parent comes in, right? Like if
Right.
these couple gets divorced and kid is 3, when step parent comes in at 13, not only is that kid way more expensive at 13, right?
Yeah.
But like the needs that document may not be addressing the needs of that child because wow, orthodontia. Wow.
Oh my
Which comes
gosh.
in.
Yes.
Wow. I know
Yeah,
when
that
I
is
went
no
like,
joke.
yeah, when I put braces on my own kid and then had to like, email his dad, this is the cost of the braces. These are the payment plan options. Which would you prefer? Like, we got to
It is
pay it one
insane.
way or another.
Yes, braces are insane. How common do you think it is that couples that are going through a divorce engage a parenting coordinator or come up with a parenting plan versus just what's in the divorce decree? I mean, I'll tell you, like, I grew up as a child of divorce and, married a man who was divorced. And when I married him, I didn't even know that there was such a thing,
I don't think it's as common as it could be for a couple of reasons. One, it's costly, right? Like you've just
Yeah.
gone through this divorce and then you're going to be paying for this other person on top of it. So, and then 2, I also think it depends on where you live, not just your socioeconomic, but how common that is. So I practice in DC and Virginia, and I'm barred in Maryland. So I have like a bit of a insight into Maryland. I don't really do any litigation there, but have done some mediations and just to give context. But in the DC, if you're dealing with, especially like two parents who are of a higher socioeconomic base, they might utilize someone, right? But if I've got someone who might be in Prince William County, Virginia, that are maybe they're two government employees, right? They are based on W-2 salaries. They're pretty standard, right? You are just not going to see enough money to be spent on that unless that is something that they have decided they are going to make a priority, because it's childcare that's still expensive, right? Food on the table, inflation, and just overall groceries. Those are going to be the things that they're needing to put they're just those essentials, versus getting a parenting plan coordinator in there or someone like that. I think it's a wonderful thing when people do use them. I think they can be extremely helpful, but I don't think it's always accessible to everyone because of the costs involved. It's just like an added luxury. And certainly I don't think anyone used it when we were growing up, right? Like in the 80s and 90s, like
for sure.
That was not a thing, right? Like I assume.
I think that's right. Yeah. I definitely never heard of it. And it does seem like, I think a lot of people, I mean, we're talking in lots of generalizations, but that's okay because this is a podcast. But, it seems like when a lot of people get divorced, they may be overly optimistic about how well they'll be able to co-parent together and not necessarily think that they'll need a co-parenting plan or a coordinator or anything like that. I mean, I certainly deal with a lot of stepmoms who are like, yeah, when I first met my spouse, we really got along with the ex. And then it was like, we got married and all of a sudden, everything went downhill and now it's this horrible high conflict relationship. And, nobody necessarily expected that. And I don't know. I feel like people may think that things will just work out.
Yeah. I mean, there's the old adage, time heals all wounds. And sometimes it does. And sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
I think that, in terms of from the stepmom perspective, I can imagine like you start off and you think, okay, this is great. We're like a new kind of Brady Bunch. And then something happens that really screws with the dynamic and the relationship. And, sometimes it's small things, a microaggression that someone might perceive as something that it's not. And it just really snowballs. I always tell clients when we're drafting the custody portions of their agreement that the schedule is to be used as a skeleton. If things are going great and your ex says to you, hey, I've got the opportunity to take them to Australia for next winter break. Do you mind if I take the entirety of the break? And you say, but that's as long as I get spring break, even though it's your year, right? And things are good like that. And you've got the ability to do that. Fantastic. Yeah. But if you don't have if you guys can't agree what time, like if the sky is blue and leaves on the tree are green, like you got this backbone to say, nope, I don't agree. This is my time. I get my week. You get your week. And that's how we're doing winter break. Right. And so that's why we put these things in there and they're not fuzzy language and about when do breaks start and how do we define them? That's why they're so specific. The documents I draft, and again, these are, just the general kind of overview, will a lot of times include things like, just some good behavior, right? It's like hard to enforce them, but we won't disparage each other in front of the kids, right? We won't talk badly. We won't use the kids as messengers, right? We'll make sure that if I get a report card, I will share it with you. Some of these types of just like, these are our basic good behaviors that we agree to, because at least they're in writing in this document. It's really hard to enforce. I was
just going to say, I love that you brought that up because I talk to so many stepmoms who are like, I can't believe that the ex is, talking about us to the kids. It says in the divorce decree that they are not supposed to disparage and we're going to take them to court. And I'm like, good luck with that. Like, does any judge ever enforce that?
Yes, but it has to be pretty, the issues are pretty, or the circumstances are pretty egregious. Like I'm recording, like I've got a recording of the dad saying really horrible things to the kid. The kid is testifying about it, right? Like I had a case years ago where dad would follow mom around. He would call to FaceTime the kids and then make the kids follow the mom around while he yelled at her.
Oh my gosh.
So like,
Yeah, like
yeah,
that.
like that, like, but just like, I know that mom is rolling her eyes at me and saying bad things is not necessarily going to be,
Right.
but you know, you kind of hope that the adults can have a conversation about, hey, cut it off. They hear things. Kids hear, they know more than what we perceive.
They
So
do. They
stop it.
really do.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's talk a little bit about you specialize in what's called collaborative divorce. And we're talking about all the conflict and stuff. Tell me what that is, and is collaborative divorce actually possible?
Yeah. Well, so there's two different types of, I would say, collaborative divorce, right? There's big C, which is an actual philosophy and program. And then there's little c, which is we're being collaborative. So in terms
Yes.
of big C collaborative, that is a structure where each side has an attorney that is trained in collaborative. That means that they have the collaborative training along with mediation training, and it's helmed by typically a mental health professional who acts as the coach. And so there's a facilitation of conversation and agreements, and there's homework with the parties. Everyone comes together. We sit together at a table to have these conversations about, these are the things we're going to talk about today. And then we agree what's the agenda for tomorrow, next week. And we set out multiple meetings. And then you can utilize a financial neutral to come in and provide an analysis of the marital assets, right? Or you can bring in someone to help with a specific issue with the children, right? Like a child therapist, and they can come in and talk about the special needs of the children and that is the big C collaborative. But one of the big things here is that both parties sign an agreement that say that neither of them will go to court. And if they do go to court, if they say, screw it with the collaborative process, they got to get all new attorneys. Now, there's like obviously carve outs in terms of if there's domestic violence, the collaborative attorney can represent them for a period of time until they've secured new representation. But that's one of the ways that they try to disincentivize going to court. It is my personal belief that the court system is not really made for custody cases. It's very, our court system is made for criminal cases and contract disputes and medical malpractice. But when you're talking about this intangible of where should my child sleep, it's hard to just base that with a judge who's never doesn't know anything about this matter, never heard about you, doesn't know the specifics. And then you're confined to what you can present based on the rules of evidence, right? And some, crazy bitchy lawyer standing up and objecting to what you're saying all the time. I mean, it's disruptive. So
Yeah, that's
it's not
such a
that I
good
don't,
point.
right? So, but we still have that mechanism because sometimes that is the only way. You need to hear it from the judge. You need to hear it from him or her in the robe up on the bench. Like that's what you need. So collaborative is just it is totally possible. The collaborative big C. Collaborative little C is, I think, really what most of us do most frequently, and what I think I do most, where we're working together and maybe we do a voluntary exchange of documents so that we agree we're going to exchange everything that we've got so that everyone is working from an equal playing field. And then we will do, maybe get mediation. Well, we'll get a mediator who can do shuttle diplomacy, right? Where my client and I are in one room, the other side is in another, and the judge is going, or a judge or a mediator, or retired judge is a lot of times I use, is going back and forth. And it can be a Zoom room or a real room. Though I do tend to think that real pants help us get settled.
I think that's right.
Yeah. But I think that that's something that that collaborative little C process is a way a lot of us do operate, because it's worth it to try to help our clients get to a resolution that they feel comfortable with. And I will say that the ones who are able to resolve their disputes without trial are much more likely in the future to be able to try to resolve it amongst themselves, or don't go all the way to trial. Whereas if you go to trial, especially on custody, it's like you have let go all of your dirty laundry. And a lot of times it's very hard to come back to a positive co-parenting relationship. And I'm not saying you're best friends. I'm saying like you're able to sit or stand on the same sideline, same side of the sidelines, right? At a soccer game without your child feeling nervous that both of you are there. Like I'm really at a basic level. Like you can, that is what I've seen. So yeah.
And that's hard. I mean, I see so many of these high conflict situations with the women that I work with, and it's really hard. And you're right. I think once you get to that court process, the chances of like healing from that are so much lower. And sometimes you just sometimes that's your option. You have to. But what do you think?
And I also think that just to go back to the stepmom aspect of it, that's where I see so much vitriol going towards stepmoms, because now there's been this huge emotional event, and now there's a new person coming in, and it's like the easier person to target the aggression on, and that's totally unfair to this new person, new stepmom who's come in, who's just like, I'm just dating this guy, and now I'm like, you know, the scapegoat for everything, essentially. Which is not,
that is so true.
And it's very stereotypical, but you do see it. Like it's definitely there.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But
no, not at all.
The natural, almost a natural stereotypical progression.
Totally. I mean, so let's, sticking with kind of the high conflict stuff, what is the best way, if you're headed to this, court situation, or there's a renegotiation of child support or whatever is going on, what is the best way for a stepmom to prepare for this or to help her spouse prepare? And, I always hear stepmoms that, feel like they've got to document everything and, do all this stuff. And I don't know, is that necessary? Like, tell me a little bit about like how the step parent plays into this, because obviously like they weren't a party to the marriage. It's not their divorce, but they feel very invested in the outcome of whatever's going on. So how can they support their spouse and deal with all that?
Well, obviously this is just general. So each case is different in terms of the documentation and what kind of documentation. I would say that they should make sure that they refrain from communications to the mom, if it's, the stepmom is the mom or not in the best of place, to not get in. It can be so easy to get into the snipping. And you want to protect the person you love. You feel like you're being unduly ridiculed and chastised and scorned. Like, I know it's hard, just don't respond, because then they can use that against you, like, and against your spouse. I've seen that a lot. And so I know how hard that is. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's like a big thing. I also think that to a certain extent is just being like a support, right? But also making sure that their own boundaries are there and their own expectations of what does this mean if they're going through a high conflict custody modification or child support modification or spousal support modification. Gosh, those are, like, just to make sure that their own boundaries are there. Like, I'm not going to get involved in this, or I'm going to be only involved only to a certain extent, or I know our money is combined, but I'm going to start, only contributing a smaller amount because I don't want to feel like my entire wealth is being consumed. I mean, these cases are not inexpensive, right? So I think that from the stepmom, there's a preservation moment of it. And I think that's totally acceptable. Some of the cases I've had, it's when you can see my client when I'm representing dad, and then and he's like, oh, my relationship is really, it's hurting. And it's like, oh God, that's so, like, they're in the middle of, I'm fighting for my kids, but this woman that I love, now we're fighting about it. Like, it's just, it's a terrible place for these people to be. And I wish I had a better answer, but just for the stepmom to be able to preserve her own self and say, okay, this is for my mental health. Like, I'm going to do it this way. Like, I think is really appropriate.
I think that's a great answer. I mean, I think that it is it's really hard because you want to be there for the person that you love. And, this is your person, and you see all of this stuff going on. Maybe the ex is talking badly about them, or, maybe the kids are being manipulated, or whatever the situation is. But yeah, boundaries are a very good thing in those situations, and trying to preserve your peace. I think that's great advice.
Yeah. I mean, I have a good friend of mine is a stepmom, and that's been some of the recommendations I've given to her. And I would give it to my clients and give it to my friends. Like, it's the same kind of recommendations. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we end, I would love to bring you back, because I feel like there are so many things that we could talk about on all of this. But before we end, I do want to end on a fun note, and that is you represented Ashley Darby from the Real Housewives of Potomac. Tell me whatever you can. Tell me, you were on one of the 2 or 3 of the episodes. How was all that? Give me the scoop.
Well, definitely not my normal day to day. How about that? She had been my client for a long time, and she asked if I would be okay going on to talk about her divorce. She was like, I'm ready. This is part of my life. And, this is what we do. And so I was like, all right, like, not on my bingo card normally, but hey, why not? So, we had a lot of conversations about what we would talk about on TV and what we would not. Right. So that there was still attorney-client privilege, because, as I'm sure you know, and some of your listeners know, what you say to your lawyer is confidential.
Right.
And that's really important to maintain that confidentiality, and so that we can have those open and frank conversations. So some of the things that she and I talked about on air are a lot of generalities, some kind of, not a lot of specifics, but it was, from the lawyer perspective, I was like, this is fun. And one of the cameramen was like, this is the most fun I've ever had with a divorce lawyer specifically. I was like, great. So, but it was like my normal day job, only I made sure I wore a lot more makeup and had a blowout.
I love it.
Right? Like, I was like, if I'm going to be on national TV, I think I need to make sure that my middle-aged self looks better. And also, Ashley is just the sweetest, kindest woman, and she is so pretty in real life and on TV that it's like, oh gosh, now I got to be next to her. But I will say that her, like, just having known her now for a number of years, her growth in this whole entire process has been really one of strength, which goes back to one of the reasons why I wanted to start doing this job in the first place in this area of law, is for women to be able to feel that they are empowered and to be able to be the co-parents and good parents and self-sustaining and self-sufficient and not worry about those things. And I can see that in Ashley. And it's really lovely to see, from, like, even having watched her on TV, right? And getting to know her so well in person, that growth. So I'm very excited. And they're like inches away from being done. There's like some court documents that just need to be signed. So,
well, good. I know that's got to be a big relief.
I hope it is for her. So, I mean, it's like almost, we're just like waiting for our judge's signature at this point, which is very exciting. So,
oh, good. Yeah. Oh, good. Well, it's always fun to hear about that. I'm a big Bravo devotee. So, and I think a lot of our listeners are as well. But oh my gosh, Maria, thank you so much for doing this. This is so interesting. And I do want to have you back. I feel like these are things that I get asked a lot by stepmoms, and I'm always like, find yourself a lawyer who understands step families, So it's great to have you here, because you do understand step families and are very knowledgeable about all of this stuff. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I'd love to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends, and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.